Good morning, everybody. Hopefully, you are off to a good Wednesday, the middle of the week already, the week between Christmas and New Year's. So usually it's a little bit more relaxing, but also people obviously are excited about the new year. I know in recent news events, obviously, there's been some changes to certain celebrations thanks to the new Omicron variant of COVID. So hopefully it didn't impact your plans. I know for me it didn't. I was just planning on being at home anyway, so it didn't really impact anything. But I know for other people they were disappointed that they're not able to do the things they want to do. So hopefully you're able to do what your New Year celebrations are later this week. Uh, but in light of the fact that we're starting the new year, that's what today's Facebook Live training topic is about. New Year's resolutions. And obviously, a big one for most people is that they want to be healthier. Typically, this means they want to lose weight. And so often that involves starting a diet of some kind starting in the new year. And so many people, it's hard to imagine, we go through Christmas, we eat a lot of food, we enjoy, and then we get on the scale and we're like, oh my God. So that's something that a lot of us have as a shared experience. And I bet you didn't know that at any given time, not just the New Year is higher, but at any given time, about over a third of Americans are on some sort of diet. And obviously, the main reason they're on a diet is because they want to lose weight. And the conventional type of thought here is that if we restrict intake, or essentially that means dieting, right? That's of some kind, that it's necessary for weight loss or weight management. And usually this involves eating less than what we feel is right, what we perceive as correct. We ignore hunger cues. We might limit the types of food we eat, such as we focus solely on protein or solely on carbs, or cutting out certain types of food completely from our diet. And we often will have exercise as a way to burn off food. And it's not the idea of exercise to be healthy, it's the idea, okay, I'm going to exercise so therefore I can eat, which doesn't equate to a good outcome. And this is all because diet can be a very confusing word, the word diet itself. Obviously, diet can have multiple meanings. It's that it can be the customary food or drink of a specific culture, or something along those lines. And the way that most of us think of diet when we're dieting is that it is a temporary and highly restrictive form of eating that is often done with the primary purpose of losing weight. And the key word here is that these are actually two key elements of what I just said were temporary and highly restrictive. And this is that means it's not going to work in the long run because of it being so restrictive, and we view it as a temporary thing versus something that is a long-term change. And so part of this is because of this mindset we go into a diet with, it is why many people are successful. And there's several components that go into this. One is that when people start a diet, they're not following the diet carefully enough to begin with to see any changes. So it doesn't result in the outcome, the loss that they wanted. Others, they will go on the diet, follow it for a while, and then come off from it completely because it's so restrictive. Or there's foods in the diet that they don't like. So it's like, well, this is horrible. I hate eating this. And then eventually, after a while, they stop because they just don't want to eat it anymore. And it's because another factor is people think, okay, I'm taking in less calories, less food. I don't have to exercise as much. So they don't exercise either at all or they cut back. And so that obviously exercise, physical activity, is a huge component of having a healthy lifestyle. And so the whole concept of dieting, it just creates this restrictive, controlling, I guess best word is relationship with food. And this is where so many people struggle, myself included, when you're coming at it from this type of viewpoint, is that when you're being restricted, you want, food. And part of it is just natural. Your body is designed not to starve. It wants to make sure you've got nourishment. So it responds to overly restrictive diets by actually slowing your metabolism. So what this does is it makes it even harder to lose weight because your body is like, oh my God, I don't have food. I don't have what I'm not gonna survive. I need to hold on to what I've got. So it's gonna slow your metabolism so that way you're not burning up energy by using your energy stores from fat or muscle, um, because of the fact that it doesn't want you to, be undernourished. So when you're dieting, you're fighting this natural instinct your body has to hold on to food. The other big component of this is when you're restricting your diet and your body's responding to this, besides slowing your metabolism, it affects your hormone levels. And there's two key levels that impact our diet. And the first one is leptin, which is the satiety hormone. This is the hormone that tells you that when, you're good, you don't need food, your body cues, it's like, okay, I've got enough food, I'm good. I'm not hungry, essentially. And then the other hormone is ghrelin, which is the hunger hormone. So when you're restricting your food, obviously, your ghrelin levels are going to go up because you're hungry. And so while your leptin levels go down. So what happens is, even when you're no longer dieting because you've reached your goal or whatever, you can continue to experience increased levels of ghrelin just because of your body's response. So this makes it even harder to maintain that weight that you got to, that you worked so hard to get to. So this is where essentially with the dieting, we're fighting our body to lose weight. And this is why dieting, A, is not sustainable, and B, is just not very fun. I mean, when we take out whole foods especially foods we enjoy. I mean, I love desserts, but I also like carbs. I mean, pizza, pasta. There's everything that you can probably even think of has carbs in. I mean, ice cream. They all have carbs. So the idea of like when you take out carbs completely, then you're restricting it. You're going to crave it even more because think of it this way: when you deny yourself something, whatever it is, and obviously in this instance we're talking about food, and food's a pretty strong motivator, for certain things, is that when you're forbidden something, that means you focus on it more, you want it more, and therefore that when you do indulge on these forbidden things, you're more likely to overindulge. And this is all because of the idea that you don't know when you're going to be essentially allowed, you allowing yourself to eat it next. And so then it gets to this whole thing of the struggle of, you're not allowed certain foods. So I'm going to give you a couple questions here. Have you ever succumbed to cravings by eating forbidden food or having a cheat day? Right? I mean, that's a big thing. You're on a diet, and okay, you designate one day a week a cheat day. So either that entire day you eat pretty much anything that you want, you don't follow the diet, or you have a cheat meal, which is where you eat, those specific items in that meal. But after doing this, where you've overindulged essentially, do you feel like that you've blown your diet or you failed, and then it leads you to eating all sorts of foods that are not on your diet? And so this is where with dieting, we have a tendency to overeat occasionally or end up binge eating. And this obviously not only jeopardizes all the effort you've put into weight loss, but it can actually lead to developing eating disorders, especially like binge eating disorders. And so this is where dieting is so harmful because it just messes up completely the whole relationship with food, the whole concept of what food is. It's supposed to be nourishment. It's not supposed to be punishment. You're supposed to be able to enjoy eating. To some extent. This doesn't mean go crazy as far as what you're eating, but this means that you're not so restrictive that when you eat, you don't look forward to it. Um, and obviously, when you indulge in those things that you are restricting, you don't overindulge. And I mean, I'm up until probably several years ago when I started understanding this whole concept of what dieting actually does and being able to recognize these patterns. I mean, I was guilty of this same concept. It's like, okay, and I'll eat healthy. And then all of a sudden, especially, and for me, I always come back to the example of when I'm at work, because we always have snacks and all this other stuff that's not healthy for you available, that then it's like, oh my God. And because I work long days, long hours, I'm exposed to it for an extended period of time. Versus if it was something that, it's there, I'm only there for a short period of time, I probably can ignore it. And I don't have the unhealthy stuff at my house. So it's once I'm out of that environment, it's not available, I can't eat it. I'm not going to go out and go purchase it because I know that it's not healthy. But if it's there, I'm exposed to it, working, you're tired, you're stressed. By the end of the day, it's very easy to reach for me, a great example, I love cookies. And obviously, people love to bring nurses cookies. So there's almost always cookies available. And so when I get to that point, it's like where you've maxed out your willpower and you're just like, okay, and you eat. And then it's like, oh my God, it's that instant rush of gratification of having the thing that I, don't normally indulge in. And then it becomes incredibly hard to have just one and limit it. And then I find myself having multiple. And it develops this whole concept of, as I was mentioning before, binge eating. It's like, oh my God, I don't know when I'm next going to have cookies. So I eat a ton of them. And that would be obviously problematic. And now that I realize that, the key thing is not doing that. And we'll get into that part of it in just a minute as far as how to sustain a more healthy lifestyle, especially when it comes to eating. Some other issues, though, with dieting is that it affects your mood. Obviously, if we know it affects your hormone levels, it's going to affect everything else as well. And part of this is that when you're not getting in enough nutrients, because you're doing chronic dieting, which means you're trying to diet over long term, it causes all sorts of internal things to be off. And then you can have irritability, you can have fatigue, I mean, all sorts of things that your body's just not supposed to have because it's supposed to have a steady state of nourishment that when you're dieting, you're not getting. Another big thing, obviously, fad diets. And this is where it gets where you restrict specific groups of foods, specific types of things, that you miss out on essential nutrients your body needs. So you can end up with health problems from dieting, depending on the type of diet you have. And then usually when you come off these fad diets, you're going to put weight back on. And this is incredibly true. In fact, 95% of people who diet and lost weight will put that weight on in 1 to 5 years. And sometimes, in most cases, they actually put on more weight than they lost. I mean, that is just crazy. I mean, and part of it is because when you're losing the weight, obviously we talked about those hormone changes, and the other body changes is the slowing of your metabolism. So you lose the weight, for some reason you come off the diet, you're fighting your body, and then all of a sudden, you become eating habits, you're going to put on the weight you lost, and because of your slowed metabolism and your messed up hormone levels, now you are going to put on even more weight because your body is trying to store it for all that nutrients for the next time that it's going to be in that starvation phase. And in fact, there's been numerous studies that indicate this. One of them was a recent one where they did a meta-analysis, like a huge analysis of multiple different studies. It was published in the British Medical Journal. And this study looked at 121 different trials that involved over 22,000 people who were either overweight or obese. And these individuals followed one of 14 of the most popular diets. And this is stuff like Atkins diet, Weight Watchers, Jenny Craig, DASH diet, Mediterranean diet. All of these 22,000 people followed one of those diets for 6 months. And so the diets were grouped into three main categories: low carb, low fat, or moderate macronutrient, which means that these were similar to the low fat group but had a slight bit more fat and slightly less carbohydrates, excuse me. So they looked at weight loss, but they also looked at cardiovascular measures like blood pressure and cholesterol. And so while on the diets for those 6 months, at the end of that period, all these people showed improvements in their health. They lost weight, their cardiovascular health was improved, and this was compared to the people who were continuing to eat, their typical diet. So that was good news. However, you get to the 12-month mark, which by that point the individuals had stopped following the diets, and unfortunately the results were disheartening, because not only did they put on the weight that they lost, but their cardiovascular health had returned to where it was before they started the diet. So it was back to poor condition. And that just goes to show that obviously when you're not following the diets can improve your health, but if you're not following them, then it gets to the point where you're back to your old habits. And this is where we find ourselves, especially most people go through this cycle of where restrictive dieting and then dysfunctional eating, then back to restrictive dieting and then back to dysfunctional eating. And it's this yo-yoing up and down that is so bad for our health, this weight cycling concept. Because the more your weight fluctuates, the greater stress it's placing on your body, which increases your chances of heart disease, stroke, and many other medical conditions, because you're placing your body under the stress of, you lose weight, then you gain weight, and then you lose weight, and you gain weight, and all the things that come with that. So that's where the concept of dieting is just so wrong, is because of the fact that when we diet, we can only sustain it for short periods of time. How it impacts our body is incredibly negative. And then we go back to our old habits, and so then we put on the weight, and we were like, oh my God, we got to lose weight again, and then we go through the whole process all over again. And the stress that places on our body is not good. So the real big question is, what can you do that's actually sustainable to help you get to a healthy weight, essentially? And key thing here, the very first thing you've got to get rid of is the idea of the diet and the diet mindset. Throw that out the window, because we know it doesn't work. Despite all the popular claims, despite people selling things that, hey, try this will help you lose weight quick, or try that's going to help you lose weight quick. Typically, when you look at what is described in many of these programs, yes, there's changes to your diet, but they also usually recommend a couple of other things. Changing your physical activity level, drinking more water, and getting better sleep. So all of those things are key components. Those things have nothing to do with any of these fad diets. You can get more physical activity, and this doesn't necessarily mean exercise. This just means move more. Obviously, getting more exercise is key. And then obviously sleeping better and being hydrated. Most of us are not hydrated well enough. And all of these things together you can do on your own without having to follow any fad diets. Yes, healthy eating is important, and we're going to dive into that here in just a second, but it's not just food. You've got to look at all aspects of your life. And this is where, when you're trying to develop a plan, you want to make sure you want to be healthy, not just lose weight, but you want to be healthy. And what does that involve? What does that look like? And this is where it gets incredibly individualized. I mean, what's healthy for one person is not necessarily the same for someone else. The general concept of we need to be more physically active, we need to do a better job of what we're eating as far as the types of food. Obviously, this is where we're talking about healthy food versus processed food, not necessarily restricting food. And then obviously the other factors that impact our health: sleep, water intake, mindset. All of these things impact us. And so what's great for me is different from what's great for you. And this is where understanding yourself is so, so important. And so when you are trying to develop new habits, essentially that's what we're doing. We're trying to develop new habits. You have to ask yourself this question. Is this something that I can maintain for the rest of my life? And that's something that we often fail to recognize when we're looking at trying to make changes, is because we view that as so temporary. It's like, okay, I only need to do this for X amount of time. I'm going to get these results and then I'll be good. And then I don't have to be as restricted on my food, or I don't have to work out as intensely or as frequently, whatever it is. And that's where the idea is any benefits you gain from any changes you make are only going to last for as long as you maintain doing that new habit, whether it's eating certain things, whether it's exercising, whatever it is. You're only going to see benefits as long as you're actually doing that habit. So when the habits are hard, and after a while you stop doing it, that's where you see the benefits go away. So this is where, when we're focusing on improving our health, usually through diet and exercise, the key thing here is you want to focus on health, not just weight loss. And this is where, as your primary motivator, and also how you're going to measure outcomes. Remember, weight loss is never linear, and it would be great if it was, but and it often takes longer than we believe to lose the weight that we want to lose. And it's usually much more challenging than we anticipate. And this is because weight fluctuates up and down. And it's going to, sometimes when you're eating, yes, maybe you're hungrier and you eat a little more, so you're going to put on a little bit more weight. Or maybe you didn't have as much time to exercise because something happened. You had a project at work that came up, or a family emergency and you didn't get to exercise. The key thing is that realizing things happen, and that's okay, but you have to go on with what your plan is, and it has to be sustainable. Something that it's not going to be that you dread coming back into it, if you've missed a couple days. And so that's where it has to be something that you believe is going to work over the long term, is that it's not a temporary thing. Don't expect instant results. Expect it to be challenging in some ways. But just remember that it has to be sustainable. It can't be something that you dread doing every day. Because if it is, then you're not going to do it, right? If you dread running and you are forcing yourself to run because you think this is the best way of how you're going to lose weight, after a period of time, you're going to stop running because you don't enjoy it. Versus if you like yoga and you have no problem practicing yoga at least once a day, every day, you're moving your body. Yes, it might not be the same as running, but you're still getting activity, physical movement. And if you pair that with a diet that you like and enjoy, and we're going to go into the diet aspect here in just a second, is that you're going to be more likely to continue with those, yoga and a healthy diet. You'll see improvement. It might not be as fast as if you are running, because obviously running can be much more intense, but it's still important. You will still see improvement. And that's the whole thing, is you have to look at it in that broad sense, and then you narrow it down to the things that you can do to actually make those changes. So when it comes to diet, and we were talking about how, when we're dieting, it impacts your body's weight system as far as cues. And this is where appetite is such an important element that when we're dieting, we actually don't pay attention to. We should be actually focusing on our internal cues as far as hunger and satiety when we're eating. It shouldn't be based off a clock. Just because it's 8 o'clock in the morning doesn't mean that you need to have breakfast. Are you hungry? Have you been up since 5 o'clock? Did you have something to eat, after you got up, and it's 8 o'clock and you're starving? Then maybe look at what you're eating for breakfast first thing in the morning. Is it keeping you full? That's one element. The other element is, if you're hungry, eat something. Key thing here is eat something that's healthy. Each one of us is different as far as, some people, they need 6 smaller meals throughout the day. Other people need 3 larger meals. Or, some people need 3 moderate meals and some snacks throughout the day. whatever it is, you have to find what works for your body and then eat when you're hungry. And this is where having healthy foods to eat on hand is so key. And so, but once you figure this out, and that's the key thing, is you have to figure it out first before you know what to do to be able to plan accordingly. And then the key thing is by not dieting, you're not restricting yourself. You're not imposing these rules, I mean, on yourself. It's like, okay, I'm hungry. Well, okay, let's eat. Well, when you're eating, the whole point is to eat whatever it is that you would like to eat without being restrictive, but stopping when you're full. And this is where paying attention to those internal cues is so important, is that you have to know what your body's feeling. And when we diet, we mess all that up. So it takes a bit of time for it to regulate back out when we're not dieting. So you want to make sure that you're actually starting to pay attention to your body. And it's the same thing like if you're exercising. Some days you're going to be able to work out or do whatever activity with a great intensity, great energy, and it's going to go great, and you're going to feel awesome. Other days, it's not going to be that way, but as long as you've gotten up, you've gotten movement in, then that's good. I mean, that's just your body. Your body's going to respond to food. It's going to respond to exercise, movement, all a little bit differently, and that is what's so important, is understanding that if you pay attention to your body's going to tell you what it needs. We just need to actually listen to it. And this is where, when we're talking about paying attention to cues, paying attention to what you want, what is it that you're craving? Your body knows what it needs nutrient-wise, and that's why typically if we're actually in tune with everything, when we're craving something, there's some nutrient that's coming from that usually our body needs. Obviously, when we're talking about desserts, I mean, if you're getting enough nutrients, you're getting enough food, you're not going to have these cravings like where you are going to overindulge. That's the key element, is that when you're giving yourself permission to eat food and you're supplying your body with healthy nutrients, then you're not going to have those cravings that you feel like you're going to need to indulge in things that obviously aren't as healthy for you. And this is why knowing your body and those internal cues is so important. And as I was saying before, the big thing here is you eat when you're hungry, not based off a clock. That's a big element. And then the key thing is focusing on healthy foods. Where is your food coming from? If you have healthy options and you're feeling like your body's getting enough nutrients and you're in tune with that, then you're going to be more likely to not overindulge in those unhealthy things. And for many people, it can be a struggle to figure all this out. And this is where, if you're not sure, definitely talk to your doctor or nutritionist or a health coach, someone who can actually help guide you down a path of finding something that is more sustainable for you, whether it's the whole diet component, which obviously that's a big component, obviously physical activity, and this doesn't necessarily mean exercise. Exercise is a key element, but it's not the whole component. All of these pieces need to work together in order for you to have that healthy lifestyle that is going to be sustainable. And this is where what you pick is, as far as a specific type of diet, sometimes is not as important as the fact of sticking with the diet or sticking with an activity. I mean, the key concept here for good health is consistency. And the only way to be consistent is if you enjoy something. Because when we don't enjoy it, we're not going to do it, and therefore it's not consistent. And so when it comes to diet, and this is diet as far as overall concept of diet and nutrition, eating, not diet like we're dieting. When it comes to nutrition, I should say, rather than diet, this is where consistency is key. And this is, for me, I know that, planning my week essentially, and I don't plan all my meals because I like to leave room for variation. I'm not one of those people, I don't like having the same meal multiple times in a week for most meals. My breakfast is pretty consistent, and part of that is just because I don't like having, when I get up in the morning, I want to get to whatever it is, get my day started essentially. So my breakfast is pretty simple. There's a little bit of variety in there, but like I have a whole wheat English muffin. I put on it some form of nut butter, whether it's almond butter, cashew butter, or peanut butter, and those are the all-natural ones, the ones that have the oil on top that you actually have to stir, and then some form of jam. And I, same thing, try to go with the jams that don't have all of the additives, no high fructose corn syrup, all that stuff. And, I put on just a minimal amount of that, but something to give it a little bit of sweetness to it. And so essentially, that's what I have every morning just to get started. Some mornings that last me all morning until lunch, and I'm fine. Other mornings, I'm hungry, and so I might have a snack, depending on what time I ate breakfast. When I have to get up and go to work, like I had to the past couple days, where I'm up at 5 and I'm having breakfast at 5:30, by the time I hit 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, I'm hungry because I'm ready to eat. I've been up, I've been moving, I've been doing stuff versus like this morning, I think got to sleep in a little bit. So I was up at 7 and had breakfast by 7:30. And as of right now, obviously it's about 9:30. I'm not hungry right now. So I'm not going to eat until I'm hungry. Most likely it'll probably last me till just before lunchtime, which that's normal. And so it's just paying attention to your body cues. And then for lunch, I vary it up. For dinner, same thing. Sometimes after dinner, I'm hungry. It really depends on my level of physical activity during the day. Like past couple days, I mean, I was at work. Yesterday, I got to walk on my lunch break. The day before, I didn't really get a lunch break, so I didn't get to. But after dinner, both of these past 2 nights, I didn't have anything. Versus tonight, I might have like a banana or something because I know I'm going to exercise, and most likely I'll be hungry. So it's just being aware of your body and not dictating, okay, it's such and such a time I need to eat, or it's, after dinner and it's dessert time, so I must have dessert. And this doesn't mean you're having sweets for dessert. I mean, it can be a banana, like I mentioned for me, but it just means that, really paying attention to the idea of what is your body telling you? Is it hungry? I know for me, after physical activity, I feel so much better. That is, even if it's just going for a walk, I feel a lot better versus, participating in some form of either the elliptical or a stationary bike or getting outside and doing a bike ride or even running, whatever it is. Yes, I feel great after those as well, but sometimes if I don't have time for that and it's just walking after dinner, then that helps even that much. And I think that's what's so important when you're considering food, is especially because that's such a key element for a lot of people, is that you've got to pay attention to what your body's telling you. And this means don't be overly restrictive, don't follow fad diets, generally focus on eating healthy, where are your nutrients coming from, try to take out processed stuff. And just doing that is going to be a huge noticeable difference. So that's the words of wisdom for this week. So hopefully you guys found it enjoyable and informative. If you have any questions, comments, put them below. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you guys. But otherwise, have a great New Year's. Hopefully it'll be dry and some sort of celebration that you were hoping to have. And I will see you guys next week. And so actually, I'll see you guys next year. And until then, stay healthy.